In some religious sects, the preaching pennant ripples so high on the mast of clerical duties that the clergyman is not called the pastor or the parson or the priest or the minister, but simply and solely the preacher. It was possibly to one of these that the stolid traffic cop was handing a routine ticket. "But, officer, I am only a poor preacher." "I know," answered the policeman. "I've heard you. Poor or not, preaching has generally been regarded in most religions as of paramount importance. In the Catholic Church, Vatican II has given the pulpit its own special salute of recognition. Before that, if anyone had asked me which was the principal duty of a Catholic priest, I should have automatically rattled off: to offer the sacrifice of the Mass and to dispense the sacraments. But now I know. To my admitted amazement, the opening paragraph of Vatican II's document on the ministry of priests declares that priests have, as their primary duty, the proclamation of the gospel. This is not to whittle away one sliver from the sublimity of the Mass. In another section of the council text, the offering of the Eucharist is set down as the priest's chief duty. It needs perhaps a pharmacist's delicate scales to calibrate the difference between primary duty and chief duty. But how often has preaching been placed in such high company? Apparently the Church wants us to realize that unless the gospel has been proclaimed, then neither Mass nor sacraments will have any meaning. Without preaching, how can the people of God know their obligations toward Him and their responsibilities toward one another? Is anyone naive enough to suggest that the answer lies in spiritual books? Those of us who have written a few are grimly aware how small a group we reach. Wasn't it Don Marquis who sourly observed that publishing a slim volume of poetry and expecting a response was like dropping a rose leaf into the Grand Canyon and waiting for the echo? You can say the same about the average spiritual book that treats Christian virtue, or the life of a saint, or a look into the liturgy. Anti-celibacy tracts may sell, but with the ordinary spiritual book the ripples rarely reach out beyond a small circle of unusually pious people. Or do you feel that, as the proper Bostonian ladies had their hats, so the run-of-the-mill Catholic has his religion, having learned it in his catechism, and so needs no more input? Didn't he go to a parochial school or a Sunday school or even the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine? Perhaps. Or, if you prefer, he surely did, but just as surely has he not gradually forgotten most of what he learned. Religious information is the same as any other kind of information. It fades away. Time lays its layer of dust on what once was shining knowledge. For that matter, once we knew the products of Paraguay and the exports of Ecuador and the curious intricacies of cube root. But how many of us would enthuse about an extensive quiz on these subjects now? So many things melt with the snows of yesteryear. From Sunday to Sunday, an able priest strives to offer a refresher course in religion. He goes back to the basics, but not with annoying obviosity. He tries to preach as if his audience had never heard. How shall they believe in him of whom they have never heard? Or how shall they hear without a preacher? Our Saviour was the preacher par excellence. In the wilderness, he preached so glowingly that they forgot their need for food, so that he had to multiply bread to feed the multitude. On the lakeside, he preached so persuasively, and they pressed so close about him that he had to make his pulpit the prow of Peter's ship. In view of his example, who can undercut the importance of preaching? Was it not preaching that founded the faith in the days of the apostles, and that maintains the faith in contemporary parishes, and that carries the faith through the sermons of missionaries to non-Christian lands? The fathers of the Church used to say that community prayer was the people speaking to God, but that preaching was God speaking to His people. From that, should we not draw the awesome conclusion that when we preach, we are the human cable bringing the commands of God down to His creatures? Each of us, standing in a pulpit, is a transmitting tower for the message of the Almighty. We become, each one of us, a kind of minor prophet. Phillips Brooks, whose statue stands in stately bronze before Boston's picturesque Trinity Church, added a fascinating detail to that image. He felt that a fine sermon was the truth of God shining through the prism of the preacher's individual personality. In other words, here is the message of God. Coming from on high like the sun, there are you, the preacher, catching the light and diffusing it in your own vivid colors among the people. Henry Ward Beecher, who, far from being a Boston Brahmin, hailed from Brooklyn, believed that the goal of every sermon should be either the making or the mending of men. What preacher worthy of his saltwater gargle can approach the pulpit with a stifled yawn if he realizes that in God's plan he is to be the channel between heaven and humanity? Wendell Phillips set down the purpose of a sermon as he saw it: the theatre amuses, the press instructs, the pulpit improves, from the valley to the plateau to the peak. If a priest has no higher privilege than to offer the sacrifice of the Mass, he has no higher responsibility than to preach the word.